In this lesson, we will learn how to create another composition using a layer as a guide for our composition settings. Then we will discuss how to add that layer to the rest of our composition. Okay, so earlier we did create a second composition simply by using that stained glass layer, and we used the Create a New Composition button to do that. But now what I want to do is actually use the layer itself and already have it placed in that new composition when the composition is created. So the way that I do that is simply by grabbing the layer that I want to do that with and dragging it onto that Create a New Composition button. So the layer that I'm going to be doing this with is the banner.ai file. So go ahead and grab that and drag that onto the Create a New Composition button. And then when you let go, we see that a new composition has been created, added to the timeline here. So now it's opening in that new tab. And our composition settings, as far as the size of that composition, are being chosen based on the size of that layer. So if I come up here to Composition Settings, we see that we have a different width and height from the 1280 by 720 that we've been using so far, but the frame rate and duration are the same as our other compositions. And our composition name is the same name that we had for that file that we used to create the new composition. So lots of helpful things there just to save you a little bit of time so you're not having to go in and change those composition settings. It's pretty intuitive just knowing what you're probably going to want based on what you've already created. So now I want to add this composition to my other composition, which is my main comp. So come back over here to main composition on the timeline and we'll click this tab. And now I want to grab the composition that was created and bring it into this main composition. So you see here that the composition created is just sitting right there at the top. And I also have the file right underneath it. So the composition is the one that I want to use. So go ahead and grab that and drag it on top of the main composition. So you see that now this has been added instead of a composition than just the plain file. And we can tell the difference because the outline of it is defaulting to this sand color, and the outline of other types of layers that are imported are that purple color. So you can see the swatches, if I go ahead and turn that on, that has a purple outline. So that's one way to tell which one you have pulled in and used. And you can also see that by the icon that's created there to the left. Now I want to scale this down a little bit, because right now it's pretty big. I just want this to fit around this layer a little bit better. So as I'm scaling that down, I'm holding Shift just to constrain that, as we've talked about in some of our earlier lessons. So I'm really wanting to line it up over here on the left. And I think I might move it down a little bit too, just so it's not obscuring those numbers quite so much. And then maybe make it a little bit smaller there as well. So now I can see my numbers a little bit better, and I can still read the text. So that's a great size for that banner composition to be. Now in our last lesson we learned about parenting, so let's go ahead and parent our banner composition to our teal circle composition. So come over here to your parenting pick whip, click that, hold it, and drag it down there to teal circle. And now if I scrub backwards, we see that that is animating along with the rest of our comp. However, it's a little bit too long and it's sticking out here on the side. So an easy way for us to fix that is simply to grab that teal circle on our timeline and hit the P key to bring up those keyframes. And then we'll move over here to our first keyframe by holding Shift just so that we're snapping to that. And then come over here to your X value and just push that over a little bit more to the left to push it out of the way. Now we animated the teal circle because that's the only thing that has the keyframes on it, but because our banner was parented to it, it also pushed that out of the way as well. And one thing you'll notice also is that the circle and the number have motion blur on them, but our banner doesn't. So we want to go ahead and check on the motion blur switch just so that it matches the rest of that animation and doesn't look like something is a little bit wrong. And one other thing that I want to do is to kind of change the color of this banner a little bit, because right now it is looking really like it doesn't match those swatches that we've created. So let's go back inside of that banner composition. So to go inside of a composition that you've created and that's been added to another composition, you simply double click it, and that's going to open it up on the timeline. So we also could have simply clicked that tab on our timeline and gone to that inner part of that composition. So now I want to add an effect to change the color of my banner, and I want to base it on those swatches that we have. So go ahead and grab the swatches from the project panel, and we'll just drag that onto our timeline. And now we're able to kind of just see what those colors are. Now I want to base it off of this red color that we have here. So let's go ahead and select our banner. And now I want to add a hue saturation effect. So I can do that by using my effects and presets panel, but I want to show you another way to get to the effects. If you come up here to effect at the top, we know that's a color correction type of effect. So you can come down here to color correction and then come down to hue saturation, and that's going to do the same thing as if we found our effect in the effects and presets panel and applied it. It's going to automatically apply it to that layer when we click that, as long as we have the layer selected first. So now what I want to do is zoom in a little bit here and grab that swatches just so that the red is overlapping with that gold color. And with my banner layer selected, let's go ahead and just start kind of playing with the value of that master hue until we get it close to the red color that we see for our swatch. Now the red color we have on our swatch looks a little bit darker than what we're getting on our banner, and that just has to do with the actual lightness of our banner compared to our swatch. So we'll come down here to where it says master lightness, and let's just turn that down a little bit. So that's getting just a little bit closer, maybe not quite that much. Looks like right about there at about -7 for the master lightness, and we're at +299 for the master hue. And those look like they are matching up just about perfectly. So if you want to, you can delete the swatches out of this banner layer, or you can go ahead and simply turn off the eyeball. So either way, we probably won't need those in there again. So now our hue has been changed inside of this composition. And if we go back out to our main composition, you'll notice that it has been changed there as well. So that is just a quick and easy way for us to change the color of something without having to go back into our source file and change it there. It's an easy way to do it right inside of After Effects. And that way later on, if we wanted to use that banner again, we would be able to grab that from the project panel, the file itself, and you notice that that still is that original yellow color. It hasn't been altered simply because we used an effect to alter it. And I've done that inside of a composition so that now if I want to add anything else to that composition, I just have a little bit more flexibility. So I can put more things inside of that composition if I wanted to add other layers. Maybe if I wanted to come in there and add one of those, the stained glass layer, I could place that maybe kind of here as a little extra design element. And then if I come back out to my main composition, we see that we can see that there. So creating that composition as a secondary way than really just adding that file is kind of another way of doing parenting. So earlier when we were using the parenting pick whip, we were forcing that to follow the animations of that original layer. But now any kind of animations that we would add on to this composition would affect everything inside of the composition. So that's just another way for you to group things together. And I really prefer it a little bit to parenting just because then I can always find exactly where those keyframes are because they're always going to be on that comp, and I don't have to remember, oh yeah, I applied those keyframes to my teal circle layer, not to my numbers layer, or not to anything else that's on this main composition. Using those compositions in your main composition is also a way to keep your timeline from getting too long. So right now I have my numbers and my circle as separate elements on my timeline, but my banner, I'm only seeing one layer on the timeline, and then the things that are inside of it, I have these two different layers, are just nested right in here, and that's how I get to them to change anything that I would want to move around. So they're still all existing right there inside of that composition. They're just grouped together a little bit differently. So in this lesson, we created another composition to add to our main composition, and we learned how this technique is similar to using parenting.